RFK Jr announces his 2024 bid for the White House amid President Biden announcing his re-election campaign. Iran amps up its ammunition grants to Russia, and Donald Trump mercilessly attacks Ron DeSantis. This is the noteworthy news that you need to know for today, Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. But first, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Also, check out my show Timeless, where I talk about timeless, eternal subjects. And also, my show with Dennis Prager, Dennis and Julie, premieres from now on this channel, the Julie Hartman channel, every Monday. To start off, RFK Jr has announced his 2024 presidential bid for the Democratic Party. This comes amid an announcement that our President Joe Biden has officially launched his re-election campaign as of today. But really, the stunning part here is RFK Jr.'s announcement. He is running as a Democrat, though many positions of his, as I am about to get into, are not aligned with the current Democratic Party. RFK Jr. is, of course, the son of Robert F. Kennedy, who is the brother of John F. Kennedy. The President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, and his Attorney General brother, RFK, was assassinated in 1968 when RFK Jr. was just 16 years old. He had a very troubled past. He has struggled with drug abuse. He has had some very unfortunate and failed marriages. And when he announced his candidacy last week, he did not shy away from acknowledging his troubled past. In fact, he made light of it. He said that many people, if they have aspirations to run for office, they live their life on the safe side so as not to get in trouble. He said, "I did the opposite." I'm reading a quote. "I got so many skeletons in my closet that if they could vote, I could be king of the world," he said. You gotta love him, at least he's honest. He said, "But I'm watching my country being stolen. I don't want the Democratic Party to be the party of fear and pharma and war and censorship and woke bobbleheads. We need to stand up to corporations. We need to stand against war. And we need to bring this party back to the party of FDR, JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, and those values." Now, before Tucker Carlson was let go from Fox yesterday, RFK Jr. went on his show last week to talk about his candidacy, and he gave what I thought was a particularly eloquent and great analysis of this awful marriage between state and corporate power that has permeated our country's politics. Let's give it a listen.
The general theme of my speech was this corrupt merger of state and corporate power, which is turning our country into a corporate kleptocracy, into a system of socialism for the rich, and this kind of a cushy socialism for the rich, and this kind of brutal, merciless capitalism for the poor. It keeps us in a state of war. It bails out banks at the same time that last month, the United States government told 30 million people it was cutting their their food stamp checks by 90%. It took 15 million people off of Medicare. The same month, it gave $300 million to the Silicon Valley Bank and tapped up the cost of the Ukraine war to $113 billion. We're sending $113 billion to the Ukraine. The entire budget of EPA is $12 billion. The budget of CDC is $11 billion. We have 57% of American citizens could not put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. A quarter of our citizens are hungry. So we're cutting welfare and food stamps by 90%.
Well, it's a brilliant analysis. He's talking about this dichotomy. On the one hand, the Biden administration pressured the FDIC to bail out the billionaires that held their assets at the Silicon Valley Bank. But on the other hand, the government, in order to do that, is cutting food stamps for people. RFK Jr. also talks about the misplacement of money, the amount that we spend, and on some really idiotic things, such as an LGBTQ museum. Yes, indeed, according to a recent bill that was passed, a spending bill, some of our taxpayer money is going towards an LGBTQ museum, as well as a Michelle Obama walkway. Kudos to RFK Jr. for highlighting this again, though he's running as a Democrat. RFK Jr. also talked about the attack on First Amendment rights and government censorship against conservatives that was exposed in part due to the Twitter files a few months ago. He also has made some interesting comments about Ukraine. His own son, Connor, actually went abroad to fight in the Ukrainian army. He asked the American people on Tucker Carlson, what are our goals? As you just heard him analyze, we, the United States, have spent $113 billion on the war in Ukraine, whereas the budget of the EPA is $12 billion, the budget of the CDC is $11 billion. And RFK Jr. said, if our goal is regime change, i.e. to oust Putin, or to run down the Russian army, the Ukrainians are sort of being used as pawns in that fight. Whether or not you agree with him, it is really, again, just amazing and very good for the health of our country that someone on the left is coming out and questioning this orthodoxy. And finally, another thing I would like to impart to you about RFK Jr. and his announcement speech is the way that he has condemned lockdowns and vaccines. He actually wrote a book about the subject, and during his announcement address, he said that he blamed President Trump for the lockdowns. He acknowledged that President Trump gets blamed for a lot of things that he did not do. RFK Jr. said that he had the right instincts. He knew he should not have closed down the country, but he got bludgeoned by certain bureaucrats. RFK Jr. did a great job analyzing many of the awful effects that came in the wake of the lockdowns. First, of course, lockdown excess deaths. He said in his speech, quote, on May 2nd, 2020, 600 doctors wrote and signed a letter to President Trump begging him not to allow the lockdowns, because at that time, all of the pandemic protocols anywhere in the world, from the CDC to the European Health Agency, said that you never do mass lockdowns. It causes worse havoc in death and injuries than if you do the standard protocol, which is you lock down the sick, you protect the vulnerable, and you let everyone else go back to work. He cited the fact that the United States has had, and some think this is a low number, 37,000 excess deaths from heart attacks, suicides, plus imprisonment. He compared the United States to Sweden, which was the only European country that did not pursue mass lockdowns when it had the lowest excess deaths in Europe. RFK Jr. also bravely highlighted the economic catastrophe that happened as a result of the lockdowns. He cited a Harvard study by Larry Summers that showed that the cost of the lockdown to the United States was $16 trillion, $4 trillion of which was actually transferred from the middle class to billionaires. We created 500 new billionaires in the wake of the lockdowns and enriched companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, and Zoom, which benefited from the lockdowns and at the same time censored people like RFK Jr. who condemned the lockdowns because, again, they benefited from them. Finally, RFK Jr. talked about the educational catastrophe of the lockdowns. I'm reading a quote from his speech. According to a Brown University study, children in this country, toddlers, lost 22 IQ points during the pandemic. And what is the CDC's response? The CDC revised its milestones so that now a child no longer is expected to walk at 1 year. They have to walk at 18 months. He says the CDC also revised their standards as far as not having 50 words at 24 months. Now a child is expected to have 50 words at 30 months. So again, whether or not you support RFK Jr. specifically, it is a really good thing that he is coming in and bringing this new life to the Democratic Party. In fact, there have been some Republicans who have joked that maybe for the first time in their lives, they will vote for a Democrat in order to have RFK Jr. advance to the primary or pass the primary and become the Democratic nominee instead of our incompetent president, Joe Biden. Now, moving on to other news, this one pertaining to international news, Iran has sent record number of ammunition to Russia via the Caspian Sea. This is an announcement that our U.S. Navy has made in recent days, that Russian ships are ferrying large quantities of Iranian artillery shells across the Caspian Sea to supply troops fighting in Ukraine. The Caspian Sea borders Russia, Tajikistan. It also borders Iran, and it is a way for Iran, according to this Wall Street Journal article, to funnel these supplies. Cargo ships carried around 300,000 artillery shells and 1 million rounds of ammunition from Iran to Russia, according to documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Now, this has come recently amid announcements that Iran is helping supply the Russian side in the war in other ways, not just artillery shells and ammunition, but specifically drones. Iran set up a drone factory in the Russian allied nation and former Soviet Socialist Republic, of Tajikistan in May of 2022. Iran sent 2,400 drones back in February of this year, and they also signed an agreement to manufacture at least 6,000 drones at a facility in Yelabuga, Russia. This story here really isn't so much about the Ukraine war as it is about the deterioration of international relations that has taken place so rapidly under President Joe Biden. That is what I want you to take away from this story. We are seeing Iran, which was and is a staunch adversary of the United States, become more aligned with our fellow adversaries and growing in its global influence. Saudi Arabia and Iran recently signed an agreement. They were horrible enemies with one another, one being a Sunni country, the other being a Shia country. They were fighting a proxy war in Yemen, and recently China facilitated an agreement between them to establish diplomatic relations, establish embassies, and exchange ambassadors. That has been a big boon to Iran in helping Iran grow on the global stage and also help Russia in the war. Additionally, Iran helped Saudi Arabia establish diplomatic ties with Hamas. Hamas is the terrorist organization that runs the Gaza Strip in the leftmost part of Israel. Again, Saudi Arabia and Hamas were mortal enemies, but since Iran has ascended on the world stage, Iran has helped facilitate the coming together of those two powers. So the point of this story here is that President Joe Biden has spent his time going to Ireland, of all places, to deal with diplomatic relations there. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, there's a war raging in Ukraine. Iran is becoming more allied with our adversaries, including Saudi Arabia and Russia. China is facilitating the whole thing, and Iran is supplying Russia with many rounds of weaponry as the United States is spending $113 billion in order to help the Ukraine side. It appears that President Joe Biden isn't concerned about this at all, again, as evidenced by the fact that he's visiting Ireland instead of the Middle East or China. Now on to our third and final news story of the day. President Donald Trump has bashed Ron DeSantis mercilessly over the past few days. We know that they are not friends. Our former president called Ron DeSantis Ron DeSanctimonious. But recently, Trump released a document called The Real Ron DeSantis Playbook. And it started off with a quote from Stephen Chung that says, quote, "The real Ron DeSantis record is one of misery and despair. He has left a wake of destruction all across Florida." So our former president, who has formally announced his bid to seek re-election in 2024, he is officially launching a vociferous smear campaign against Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. Now, Ron DeSantis has not officially announced his candidacy for president of the United States, though, of course, we all speculate that he is going to run. Trump, in this Real Ron DeSantis Playbook released a few days ago, cited many left-leaning studies, actually, of why Florida is allegedly unaffordable, unsafe, and has a failing education system, a failing medical environment. Trump also talked about in this memo how Florida is apparently the 26th best state for working moms and the 29th best state for workers, which of course, because it's in the second half, it is not a good number to say that Florida is 26th for moms and 29th for workers. Donald Trump does not acknowledge, though, that he himself moved to Florida in 2019, and his children, indeed Ivanka and Jared, moved to Miami. Also, Florida, according to the U.S. Census, is the most moved to state in the union. 318,000 people moved from Florida from July 2021 to July 2022. Additionally, Florida does not have an income or estate tax, and Governor Ron DeSantis has cut taxes, kept schools open, revised an AP African American course in order to get rid of critical race theory. He issued the famous Parental Rights in Education Act, which the Democrats called the Don't Say Gay bill, which prevented youngsters, those under the age of 8, from learning about homosexuality and transgenderism. And Ron DeSantis has also signed many executive orders in order to uproot the prevalence of the Chinese Communist Party in TikTok on government phones. So whether or not you support Trump or DeSantis, the point here is that Trump clearly feels very threatened by DeSantis. He is stepping up the ante. And many on the right, I think, are rightfully arguing that we should be united with one another, supporting each other's victories instead of seeking to tear each other down. Thanks for joining us today. Remember that you can watch my show Timeless on this Timeless playlist on this YouTube channel, and you can also follow me at Julie R. Hartman. And be sure to click the subscribe button down below. Take care and see you soon.